Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jack of All Trades podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Musso, and I'm super thrilled to be back here recording again because I feel like it's actually been a minute since I've been able to sit down and record. But that's because I've actually been traveling the past couple weeks, so I haven't really been home. I've been really busy, but that's what this episode is going to be about. So I have lots of stories, did lots of things. I'm going to get into all of it, just a kind of general recap of it all. It was a really unique trip because I feel like I did so many different things within the same trip and was kind of all over the place. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that has listened to the podcast so far, whether you've listened to all of the episodes or just a few here and there. I understand that not every episode topic is for everyone, but I really appreciate those of you that have given it a chance. I know that not everyone is a podcast fan or a podcast listener. So if that's you, thank you for giving this one a chance. And for this episode, just buckle in, get ready, do whatever you want to do while you're listening, whether you're driving to work, whether you're getting some chores done, whatever it is that you're doing, strap in and let's talk about my trip. So basically, I went to a Coldplay concert. And if you don't know who Coldplay is, they have been a band for several decades, actually. And they are very internationally known, very talked about, very relevant still. They have a lot of good hits that they've put out, and they are just such an incredible band. Their lead singer, Chris Martin, is such an amazing human. And I'm a Coldplay fan. I wouldn't say that I'm like a stan of Coldplay. I wouldn't say that I am obsessed or anything. I've listened to a lot of their music, but there's still plenty of their songs that I don't really know. So it's not like I'm a super fan, but I enjoy their music, and I've seen so many pictures and videos from their concerts, and it just really looks like such a cool concert experience. So I was like, I would love to go to a Coldplay concert someday. And then I forget when, this was probably sometime last year. I don't know. We saw that they were going to be going on tour, and my brother and cousin and I decided, you know what? Let's try and get tickets. That would be super cool because they were going to be coming to Boston. Well, Foxborough technically, but Gillette Stadium. And I've never been to a stadium concert, and neither has my brother Ethan or my cousin Heather. And just as a disclaimer, if I do say people's names in this podcast, it's because I've already checked with them to make sure that they're okay with it. So I want to respect everyone's privacy. So I have checked to make sure I can use certain people's names. Just the disclaimer. So, but anyway, the three of us, we went to a Niall Horan concert last summer when he came to the waterfront in Bangor, Maine. And that was really cool, but it wasn't a stadium. It was just like a outdoor amphitheater type of situation, I guess you'd call it. And so it was like a really cool experience, but it wasn't a stadium. So for Coldplay, I was really excited to go to a stadium concert for the first time. I was kind of intimidated, not going to lie. Beforehand, I was like, that seems like a really big deal. But we were able to secure tickets. Thank you to Ethan. Well, Ethan and his friend that he goes to college with, they were both trying to get tickets because I guess you could only buy like them in sets of 4 tops. So it was me, Ethan, my cousin Heather, who's the one that I mentioned is 3 years younger than me, and she also lives in Maine. And then it was my brother's friend. So the 4 of us got our tickets, and we ended up, well, the thing is, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I am a black belt in karate, and there's a karate tournament that I've competed in before, and it's down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and it was going to be the Saturday after the concert. So the concert was Tuesday, July 15th, and then the tournament was Saturday. And so, and my dad also still trains in karate. He's also a black belt, and so he decided he would compete with me. We then decided, you know what, let's just make a whole trip out of this. So we decided that my brother and I would essentially, because my parents weren't going to this Coldplay concert, so they drove down the next day. We met up with them. My cousin Heather had to go back to Maine for something for a few days. So my parents and brother and I, we continued down to Tennessee, and then my aunt and uncle, and then my cousin Heather and her older brother Curtis, they drove all through the night. It's basically like 17-ish hours from where we live to get down to where we were staying. It's like around that. So they just drove straight through, and they were able to get there, I think it was Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday, like afternoon. And then we had rented a cabin, like an Airbnb, and then we spent the entire week afterwards down there in Tennessee. So we just kind of turned the whole thing into a trip. So I do plan on doing an episode where I specifically talk about the Coldplay concert, because I have so much to say about that, and I wish it was still fresh in my mind, but I will record an episode where I dive into that. And just for now, if anyone's wondering, no, it was not the Coldplay concert, the one where that CEO got caught having an affair. It was not that one. It was the night before. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's all over the internet, so you can just look it up. Just type in Coldplay concert affair or CEO, and everything will pop up that you need to know. But no, that was the night afterwards. So that's not the concert that we were there for. Really great experience though. We had a lot of fun, and then my brother and cousin and I ended up staying at his friend's house that was like 30-45 minutes away from the concert venue. We spent the night there. It was a really late night, and then it was a really early morning because my cousin Heather was going to be catching a train to go back to Maine. And so we had to get to the train station, which was a ways away. And we did get up early enough to allow plenty of time for traffic. The train was supposed to leave at 9:08. We were going to get to the train station at like 8:30 based on when we left. However, there was a lot of traffic, and it was everybody going like Boston direction, like to get to work in the morning. And it was a Wednesday morning, and the traffic was crazy, and our ETA kept going up and up and up, and eventually our ETA was like 9:12 or something, which is after the train's supposed to leave. And so we're like, what should we do? So basically, because that's where we were going to be meeting my parents as well, it was at the train station. Basically, my cousin had to cancel that ticket, and then she got a later one for like 12 something that same day. So we made to the station, and we kind of hung out there for a few minutes and then left her there, and my parents and brother and I went on from there. We drove to New Jersey for the night, Jersey City specifically, which I have been to one other time, I think, on a different trip, but we stayed basically like right on the water, like where our hotel was. You go outside and you could see the water right there, and you could see right across the water to the Empire State Building and the skyline. So that evening, we just kind of walked outside and watched it get dark and saw the skyline and everything, which was really cool. We have done that one other time, the four of us, from a different spot. And this was a few years ago, because a few years ago, the four of us, my parents and brother, we did a trip that was just specifically a road trip, and we saw Kentucky and Tennessee and some of those areas. And on our way down, we did stop, and we were in New Jersey, and we were looking across the water and everything. So we have done like a similar thing before. So this, destination wise, this was not like a new trip destination for me or for any of us. However, my cousin and aunt and uncle, and well, both cousins and aunt and uncle, they had never been, I don't think, to this area. Or maybe my uncle had when he was a kid. That's my dad's brother. I don't know. But it was going to be new for them, so we were excited to kind of bring them along. That's kind of the situation with that. Anyways, this would have been Wednesday night that the four of us were just kind of watching it get dark, seeing all the lights in the city. It was cool to see. And then the next day was Thursday, and so we decided to have some time actually in New York City. The four of us have been to New York City before. This was years ago, though. Like, my brother and I were significantly younger. But we did a bunch of things while we were there that time. I mean, we went up in the World Trade Center. We went up in the Statue of Liberty. We went to Central Park. We did a bunch of things. But one thing that we never did was the 9/11 museum itself. Like, we saw the reflecting pools and everything, but we never went in the actual museum memorial things. So we decided to do that this time. And so we rode I think it's called the Path or something. It's like the train that goes under the water to the city, from Jersey City over to New York City. So we rode that in the morning, and then we got over there and we spent a couple hours in the museum. And honestly, I highly recommend. It was a really sobering experience. It was a really deep experience, but it was very cool. I wasn't alive for 9/11, so it's not like I have specific memories as far as like where I was that day or anything like that. But it's a really impactful thing to do, and like especially for people that weren't alive, it's a really good way to learn even more about it and kind of put yourself in the shoes of the people that were there. There was a lot of really incredible displays, really meaningful displays. You were actually like right down under where the foundations of the two towers were, is actually like the museum is right there. You literally see the foundation. There's like preserved staircases that were like the last ones that people escaped from. There was this one section actually that was like particularly emotional, where you go in and there's just like from floor to ceiling on every wall there's just photographs of the all of the people that died, like that they had identified. And then you go into this like dark room and they have it projected on the wall, like more about who these people were, their lives, their stories, where they were headed, like if they were on the plane or just like a situation, what the situation was, why they were where they were that day, and then just like stuff from their families talking about it. And it was like, it was really good to like humanize these people, because when it's just like, oh, this many people died that day, like it kind of, you kind of just glaze over it. But when you look at like, these are actual faces of people that are no longer with us, and like this is their actual story. Like this person was like flying to a medical conference that day and then never made it, and like just thinking about his wife, who probably was for the rest of her life wishing that he never had to go to that work conference. Like it was crazy to put like individual stories and lives to these people. And what was interesting is actually throughout the museum, which totally makes sense, this is so genius, but they had at the end of some benches, they had built-in tissue boxes with like tissue dispensers and trash cans, which was so smart. There was also a really, really effective display that was kind of hidden, that was basically, it was pictures of people jumping from the towers, people that that was really their only option, was doing that. And that was a really, really emotional display. Like everyone else that was in the museum there that was looking at that like exhibit, just those pictures, it was just like we were all just standing there in silence and like kind of in horror, and just like there were tears from people, and it was like really crazy. So I would say definitely it's not a lighthearted place to visit, but it is a really big part of our country's history. So if you are in New York City, I wouldn't suggest bringing a tiny child there by any means, but if you feel like you can handle it, then I think it's a really good thing to do. So we did that. And then we grabbed some lunch afterwards, and then we did I think it was the Staten Island ferry. You can ride it for free, and we didn't have tons of time left, so basically we just rode it one way and then rode it right back. So it was just nice to get like views of the city. Well, you could see Jersey City and you could see New York City, and it was just nice to get views from the water, and it was a nice sunny day. It was absolutely gorgeous. So that's something you can actually do for free. So if you're trying to save money and still do something fun, I would recommend it, because it's just a way of transport. Some people just use it as a way of transport to get from one place to the other, but then some people do it for sightseeing. So really either option is fine. So that's what we did. And then where we had parked our car, we only had until like 5 p.m. So when we got back from the ferry, we basically just left and we drove, and we just decided to see how far we would get that night. So we drove probably, I don't know, 5-6 hours, probably 6 hours, until we got to a hotel. If I remember right, I think our hotel ended up being in Virginia somewhere. I could be wrong. I don't totally remember. No, I don't know why I get so out of breath when I'm recording these podcasts, but I think it's because I'm the only one talking, and I'm kind of holding my breath while I'm talking, because I'm trying not to just like breathe down the microphone really hard. So sometimes I have to pause it to literally just be like, oh, okay, take a breath. But anyways, to give you some context for the karate tournament, this is the IHOF karate tournament. It's the Ishinryu Hall of Fame karate tournament. It happens every summer in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. and I competed there, I think it was 2 years ago. My dad and I both competed. And that year, I placed third in kata in my division and third in weapons in my division. However, for kata, my brother and some of the other ones from the dojo were like adding up the scores and everything, just for their own, like they just so that they could see. And all of them calculated the scores. I should have been second place in kata. And there was this really big like confusion when they were trying to line us up for scoring, where they kept like asking our names over and over again and then going back and like whispering to each other, and then like they were all confused, and then they were going to look at scores, and then they like lined us up in a certain order several times and then like changed their minds. And I don't somehow like something got messed up, and so they gave me third place. But then I was told afterwards by like some of the ones that had added up the scores that I should have been second, and I was like, well, that's kind of unfortunate. Like if I would have earned third, like whatever, that's what I earned. But if I should have gotten second and I was given third because they like messed something up, that's kind of sad. So I was going to compete the next year, which was last summer, and my brother Ethan was gonna go down with me, and we were gonna fly. So our flight was early Friday morning. We were gonna have a layover in New York City, and then where we would fly into, we were gonna have to then we had a rental car, and we were gonna drive like 45 minutes to where we were staying, and then we were gonna have to do some grocery shopping, get some food, and that was gonna be our Friday, right? However, I don't know if any of you remember, but last year there was one day where there was this major global IT outage where, I don't know, there was some update or something that didn't go as planned or something. And so it affected everything from banks to hotels to airlines to like it shut down a lot of things. And lucky me, it just happened to also be affecting the airline that I was flying on. And so we got to the airport in Maine. I think it was the Portland airport. We got there at like probably 4:30 in the morning. It was really early. And we were at our gate, and then there seemed to be some sort of delay, and we weren't sure exactly what was happening. And then they came on and announced something about technical difficulties, and there might be a little bit of a delay. And we're like, okay, whatever. And then they came on a bit later and said that it had been stuff that they had been working on since last night, and they were still working on it, so there might be more of a delay. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, we do have a layover. Like, we do have another flight to catch, but okay. Hopefully they get it figured out. And then eventually we like still hadn't heard and still hadn't heard and still hadn't heard. And then we start seeing stuff on our phones, like news articles and different posts and things about this IT outage and about flights being grounded and things stopping, like coming to a halt. And we're like, okay, like what is this? What is this? And so eventually they come on and they announce that all flights are there's like a ground stop or a ground halt or whatever the terminology is for that airline. And there was other airlines affected by it too. Just whatever airlines used this specific system. I don't remember what it was. And so no planes could take off because like they couldn't board us because they couldn't like get into their system. And all of the screens were just like blue and said the same message. And at this point, the only thing stopping us from missing our second flight was the fact that it was the same airline. And so they also couldn't go anywhere, take off or anything. So eventually, there was quite a period of time where we just weren't hearing anything. Like there was just no updates. And then eventually they told us, okay, we're all going to go to a different gate. So we went to this different gate and we were waiting there for what felt like forever and didn't hear a single peep, not a single update, nothing. And so we were sitting there for forever and we're like, okay, like we're still going to make our second flight. I think we're still going to make our second flight. Because at this point it was still going to run because the ground halt or whatever was still in effect. But eventually they lifted that. I don't know, somehow they figured out something with the system. They figured out at least enough for us that we were going to be able to board. But then right before they were going to start boarding us, we saw that our second flight had been canceled. I think it was canceled. I don't know. There was some reason why we weren't going to be able to get on our second flight. And so we're like, what do we do? Ethan, my brother, I think he went to go and wait in line at the desk to try and ask about like a later flight or ask about something, because I think there was another one or two flights like later in the day from that same New York City airport that were going to where we needed to in Tennessee. So he got in the line and was going to ask about it, but like they were boarding our flight at this point. And we were like, we need to get on. Like, this line was taking forever because, of course, so many people had complications. Like, everyone had questions. It was affecting so many people. And so we're like, well, we we just need to get on this flight. Like, we need to get on. We were like, you know what? We will get on this flight, and then when we get to New York City, we will figure it out. So we got on that flight, and this was probably like 11 something in the morning. Keep in mind we had got to the airport at like 4:30. Our flight was probably a 6 a.m. flight. So 11 something a.m. we finally get on a flight to New York City. When we get to New York City, of course, that's a much bigger airport. We had to walk what felt like forever to get to where our new gate was supposed to be for one of the later flights. And we were trying to figure out, like, okay, can we get on this like later flight? But then when we got there was like nothing on that screen, or it was like a different flight or something. We were trying to figure out anything that we could, right? And I mean, I was asking, like, there was flight attendants and stuff that were like waiting in line kind of around that gate, and I was asking them, and they were trying to help me figure it out, but they were also like, we haven't been told anything either. Like, you would think that we would know stuff before you guys, but like, we're in the same boat. We literally have no idea what's going on. Like, they were trying to be helpful, but they really didn't know either. So we were kind of like, I guess we're gonna have to just find a desk and get help at. But there was long lines at every single desk, and like the help desk, one of them was closed, and so the only one that was open had a really 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 long line. And of course, it's not like a line that moves fast because everyone has really complicated stuff, and the people at the desk are having to make phone calls and do all these things, and it's like it was taking forever. So Ethan and I take turns in this line. At this point, we're like, we need food, we need water, we need to like sit down. So we would take turns in this line while the other person would like go get food, eat something, go to the bathroom, like go sit, chill out. We would like switch off. Which for that, I'm very glad that I wasn't just traveling alone, because I would have lost my place in line. I wouldn't have been able to stay in that line, because guess how long we waited in that line? We waited for 3 hours. 3 hours in that one line. 3 hours. Could you imagine if it had been like just one of us and we had to leave the line to go to the bathroom or get food or something? Would have lost your plate. 3 hours. And when we got to the line, it wasn't super long, but it was growing and growing and growing behind us. Like, those people that were in line behind us would have been in line for like 5 hours. Not even kidding. It was atrocious. It was awful. And finally, we get close to the front of the line. Keep in mind, like, now at this point, my parents from home are trying to figure stuff out for us too. They're trying to make phone calls, and my brother was on hold with someone for like a long, long time. Wasn't really having much luck with anything else that we were trying. So eventually, we're almost at the front of the line, and we hear them telling other people, yeah, the next flight we can put you on is going to be this day, that day, whatever. Like, no, we don't have any more flights to this, to that. And we're like, this is not looking good. This is not looking good at all. And people were also being like such Karens. It was actually atrocious, and it was making the process take so much longer. And it's like, y'all, please just cooperate. Like, we all want to get to where we're going. Everybody's stressed. Like, just chill out, please. And at this point, I was getting super discouraged because I had trained so hard for this tournament. I felt so ready. I felt so good. And I was like, you know what? This is exhausting. And we have been waiting in line for 3 hours. We have been at airports all day. We've missed our rental car appointment by a long shot. So if we do finally get there, then we still have to figure out if we can get our rental car. And then we have like a 45-minute drive to where we're staying. And then we have to check in there late. And then we would still have to get groceries. And then doors open at 8 a.m. the next morning for the tournament. And I need to be in good competing condition. And like at this point, I wasn't. I was like, I feel absolutely disgusting and exhausted. So I was so discouraged, and I was like, even if there is some way for us to even get there on time, like at this point, I almost don't even want to. Like, I just want to go home. That whole time while we were in line for those 3 hours, I had so much time to think about that. And I was just like, oh, like, I really want to compete. I've trained so hard, but I just really don't feel like it anymore because of all this stuff. And we get to the front of the line and they tell us that the next flight they can get us on to Tennessee would be on Monday. Monday. This was Friday. They said Monday. And I said, okay, well, my karate tournament's tomorrow, so that's not gonna work. Is there any way that we can get on a flight back to Maine? Just soonest flight back to Maine, because if we can't get to Tennessee till Monday, then there is no point. They were like, yeah, there's a flight that we can put you on. It was at like 5 or 6 p.m. or something back to Maine. So we're like, okay, great, let's do that. Even if we can't get refunded, whatever, like that's what we're gonna have to do. So that's what we did. But then that flight was delayed for like another hour or something. But eventually, late that evening, we make it back to the Portland airport. Our parents pick us up, and it's like, well, that was a fun day. The funny thing is, my karate uniform and my belt and my weapons and everything, all of those made it down to Tennessee because we sent those down with some of the other black belts that were driving. And those black belts actually picked up my pre-registration stuff for me and everything. And then I just had to keep in touch with everyone and be like, I'm not going to make it. It was devastating. I was so devastated and I was so like triggered by it. And everyone at the dojo felt so bad. But that was that experience. I kind of talked about that for way longer than I intended to, honestly. So I might have to do a 2-part. I'm definitely going to have to do a 2-part trip recap because this episode is already getting long. Anyway, I was really disappointed because I had trained very, very hard and I felt like so much more prepared than the year before. And so I kind of felt like that global IT outage ruined my chances because I was like, of all the, like the one day that I'm flying, of course it would be then, and it would be the airline that I'm flying. Luckily, my brother and cousin and I, Ethan and Heather and I, we had a trip to France planned for later that summer, and luckily it didn't happen then because that honestly would have been worse. So I guess I am glad that it happened when it did. So that's the one positive I guess I can look at it. But anyway, so because of all of that happening last year, this year it was like, okay, this needs to be my redemption round because I tried so hard to make it last year and couldn't. I better make it this time. I better. And people were joking with me, like when I actually finally did make it to the venue this year, some of them were joking with me about like, don't forget your gi and your belt tomorrow because like you don't need the opposite happening where like you're here but your stuff isn't. You know, it was funny. And yeah, it was like, wow, you're actually here. Like you physically made it. So yeah, I was very glad that I was able to compete this year. The only downside was that I did not feel prepared at all. I had been dealing with a lot of health stuff. I had been super busy. I had not been able to do the training that I wanted to do. And so I was like, I really don't feel prepared. And that's disappointing to me because if I'm going into all this effort, then I want to do well, obviously. And who knows how many more times I'll even be able to compete at this tournament or at any. Depends on my life trajectory and where that takes me. So I was like, I really want to do well, but I haven't been training. I haven't been prepared. But anyway, so that was a really long-winded thing. So anyways, to get back on track, Friday is the day that they have seminars where people that are being inducted into the Hall of Fame that year, like black belts that are being inducted into the Hall of Fame, run seminars where they teach different things, whether it be something to do with a specific kata or forms, depending on what you know it as, or like self-defense or something like that. And I've never done those seminars, but just because, I don't know, the timing isn't the most convenient and usually we're like arriving on Friday, but you also are supposed to pick up your pre-registration stuff on Friday. You can do it Saturday morning, but the lines are really long and it's much better to just already have it when you get there. So, and that's only until 3 p.m. So we needed to get there by then. But Friday morning, we still had a bit of a drive to do. And so it was probably, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, like 5 hours that morning maybe that we drove. And we got there at like 2 to the venue. And my dad and I picked up our stuff. And then we talked to some of our fellow dojo families that were there because some of the kids were in the seminars. So we were able to do that for a little bit. And then Friday night, there is a banquet, and that's when they honor everyone that's being inducted and they give out a bunch of awards. And we did do that last time we competed, but honestly, it's not something that we were able to do this year. So after we picked up our pre-registration stuff, we did some grocery shopping, and then we still had a bit of a drive to our Airbnb because that's like 45 minutes away from the venue. Last time we competed, we did stay a lot closer, but this time we just wanted to be more in the area where we could easily get to some of the other things we wanted to do the following week. So the first family trip that we took that was down in that area, we stayed in Townsend, Tennessee for a few nights in a cabin, and that's actually where we stayed this time. It was in Townsend, Tennessee, different cabin, different place, but that's where it was for those of you that are curious. So I am going to do a specific episode where I talk about karate tournaments in general, but I'll talk about this tournament in that episode. I don't want that to be like the focus of this one. So I will get into that more. So if you're curious, just stay tuned for that one. Like I said, I'll do the concert specific episode and I'll do a karate tournament specific episode because both of those warrant more explanation and stories and details and everything. So anyway, the tournament was Saturday. Doors open at 8. It starts technically like 9 or 9:30, but of course they're running behind schedule as usual. Went through the day, competed. I got third in kata. I got first in weapons, so then I advanced to the semifinals, got second in semifinals, and the girl that beat me is the girl that won the grand championship. So I don't feel too bad about that because that's who beat me. Better luck next time when I actually like train really hard. I'll come and beat her. I got it in me. Anyway, that was the tournament, and then my aunt and uncle and cousins, like I said, they were able to leave earlier than they thought, so they were able to just drive straight through and get there for Saturday afternoon, evening. And so we just kind of had a chill evening at the cabin at the Airbnb. That was that. And then Sunday we did our own little like church meeting right there in the morning, and then I think we had like a chill afternoon. I'm going to try and remember all this the best that I can, but we had a chill afternoon. Some of us played games. I think we played like Dutch Blitz, which is like one of my aunt's favorites, and it's such a competitive game. Like I'm not the best at it, to be honest, but it was fun. And then in the evening, we did the Cades Cove Loop, which is in Smoky Mountain National Park. And I've done it before with my parents and brother, but my cousins had never done it. So, it's actually a free national park to get into, I believe. A lot of national parks you have to pay to get into, but this one I think is completely free from my understanding. It's free to do the Cades Cove Loop, and it's basically a scenic loop that you can drive that you get to see the mountains and the fields, and the main highlight is that usually you can see a lot of good wildlife, especially if you go in the evening. That's a time that a lot of people like to do it because there's more likely to be wildlife. And so last time we did it, we saw like a coyotes, we saw bears, we saw deer, we saw a bunch of things. And this time we did see a bunch of deer, like with really big antlers. There was some debate about whether they were deer or elk, because in the bathroom there were signs about giving elk privacy. So I don't know. They weren't your typical deer. We did see actual like definite deer, but we also did end up seeing a bear at the very end. There's like tons of black bears in Tennessee, and so that's like just like how in the state of Maine like so many things are moose themed. Well, in Tennessee so many things are bear themed. Like our cabin, like there are so many things in there that were bear themed. That's just the thing, right? So we did actually see a couple bears at the very end of the drive. They like crossed the road 5 cars in front of us, so we did get to see that. But we actually, even before that, I forgot, but we got to see one at our cabin, because where our cabin was, it was like we had 3 balconies all like above each other. It was a 3-story place on this really, really steep wooded hill. And I think it was my cousin Heather that was out on the balcony, or it was her or Ethan that just noticed like there's a bear. And so they came in like, guys, come quickly and quietly, but there's a bear. And so we saw our first bear that trip right from our cabin. So that was really cool. And then it was kind of cute, but we saw that one. So, but then we did see one on the Cades Cove Loop Drive. So that was nice that we got to see the wildlife. And it actually turns out that one of the karate families that was down there for the tournament, they also drove the Cades Cove Loop that night. And we figured out they might have been one of the cars in that lineup in front of us when we did see the bear, because they talked about seeing the bear and it crossing the road, and the spot they were describing, it was like, yep, that's where we saw it. And there were a few cars in front of us. So that's pretty cool. Before we did the Cades Cove Loop, we stopped and had a picnic because there was a picnic spot that was like right on the river and you could go wading. And so a bunch of us got in the water and were wading up the river, which was really nice. So that was a cool little thing to do. But yeah, I think I'm going to stop there for today, and then I'll do a second episode where I get into the rest of the trip, because I definitely have a lot more to talk about and I don't want this episode to get too long. Stay tuned for that. At some point, I think I'm going to switch to probably doing like bi-weekly instead of every week for an episode, especially when I get back to school. But for right now, I still have a lot of different episodes to record. So yeah, I think I'll just keep it at every week for now. But just a heads up, because I know it is like a lot of content to take in sometimes if it's like every week there's a new episode. So anyways, thank you guys for listening to this one. It honestly is not exactly how I thought the episode was going to turn out. I didn't plan to talk about like the IT outage experience for most of it, but it is what it is. Hope you guys enjoyed anyways, and I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you have a great weekend whenever you're listening to this. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode.